There's been a lot of negative talk about the Giants farm system, but boy, oh boy, does the Zips projection system like the Giants' top prospect.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide episodes 3 days a week for now, back to 5 in March, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, hosting this show since prior to the 2019 season, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day, or 3 days a week for now, or Monday through Friday, 10 months out of the year. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. And coming up on today's show, the number one thing that I want to get to as spring training is underway, position players have reported as of Monday, and games are going to get going like tomorrow for the Giants, tomorrow or Saturday, and the season is just over a month away. But the farm system, it is such an important thing for the San Francisco Giants because they have been a middling team for the last, 6 out of 7 years? 5 out of 6 years? Zaidi was here for 6 years, and there was one good year, 107 wins, and then the rest have been right around 500. 2018, we kind of don't count that. It's not really his fault. He inherited the team that he inherited, but then a bunch of 500-ish teams and then a 107-win team mixed in. But the farm system, it's been a topic of a lot of conversation. We've made the case. We read Kylie McDaniel's little report on the Giants farm system, which I think he ranked 29th or something. No, maybe not that bad. Like, I forget exactly what it was, but it wasn't great. And though, if you read the fine print or just read the blurb, it was saying this ranking is largely due to the fact that they've had so many graduates, meaning players who no longer qualify as prospects, in the last 2 years. And that includes a number of players that are unproven yet at the major league level, but who are going to play a lot moving forward, or at least the ones who perform will play a lot moving forward. And by not doing all that much this offseason, despite a big move for Willy Adames, what that signals is that they're going to let these young players play. And we're talking Tyler Fitzgerald building on his breakout season, Elliot Ramos building on his breakout season, or having a chance to at least. And there's Marco Luciano, and there's Luis Matos, and there's a bunch of pitchers, Hayden Birdsong, Landon Roop, Carson Whisenhunt hasn't made his debut yet, but he's a name to watch. There's other pitchers who have been added to the 40-man roster who are names to watch, and these are all players who don't, well, except for Whisenhunt, count as prospects anymore because they've graduated rookie status. There's also Casey Schmidt. I left him out. There's Wade Meckler, Grant McCray, and Mason Black. I think he's lost his rookie status as well. So anyway, a large Keaton win. Large part of this is because in terms of their ranking, Kyle Harrison, there's just a lot of guys. I can't even keep count as I'm going through this. But where I'm trying to land here is by saying they may have a gem in their farm system. And every year, we do the Zips projections. We look at the projections for the Giants. The major league team includes minor league players too, but every year Dan Szymborski, who does these Zips projections, puts out a Zips top 100 prospects list. And this follows the FanGraphs top 100 prospects list. And so those are different things in that the FanGraphs top 100 prospects list is compiled by Eric Longenhagen, who's a scout essentially. And so there's obviously the scouting angle of evaluating talent that has yet to prove itself at the major league level. And then there's like the computer model method of evaluating talent that is yet to prove itself at the major league level. And I think, obviously I think a blend of both is probably ideal, but I just want to get into the Zips top 100 prospects list first, and we will get to the FanGraphs one second. The reason I want to do Zips first is because if you know me, I'm a fan of analytics. Like, I understand their place in baseball. I also understand the human side, and I appreciate that a lot as well. But those who write off analytics are being silly, and Buster Posey himself will tell you that. He's like, look, if we don't embrace analytics, we're going to be left in the dust. Like, he basically said that. Like, he has to be asked that stupid question excuse my language, but I've heard it asked to him, are you going to use analytics? And he's looks at people like, what? Of course. This game, you have to in today's day and age. Otherwise, teams are going to lap you more than the Giants are already being lapped. So anyway, Dan Szymborski, he went back and looked at his top prospects list from 2015 just to kind of see how that fared. And top prospects at the time in 2015, according to his projection system, Chris Bryant was number 1, Jock Peterson number 2, Francisco Lindor number 3, Addison Russell, who was having a nice career until some domestic violence issues occurred. J.P. Crawford was number 5, Joey Gallo number 6, Byron Buxton number 7, Carlos Correa. So you can see it's Corey Seager then is on this list, Carlos Rodon. And a lot of times when you look at these lists, they don't really align with the scouting. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't with the scouting lists. And so it's interesting when the models like Zips differ from traditional scouting lists. And I think it's more objective because sometimes there could be groupthink with prospect analysts where they're like, well, everybody else is saying this guy. So, you know what I'm saying? So therefore, I wanted to look at this. And yeah, okay, so Roki Sasaki is considered a prospect. And he's the guy, came over from Japan. Dodgers got him. He's ranked number 1 by Zips, the Zips projection system, Zips top 100 prospects list, I should say. And he's also ranked number 1 by FanGraphs in terms of the scouting evaluation. So that's why it's so annoying that the Dodgers got this guy without having to pay a lot of money. They paid him just international bonus pool money because he wasn't eligible yet for a huge contract. Same thing with Ohtani when he came here. But the person I want to talk about is Bryce Eldridge. Bryce Eldridge, who we'll get to where he's ranked by Eric Longenhagen, the scout at FanGraphs. But by Zips, Bryce Eldridge comes in at number 6, the 6th best prospect in baseball, according to Zips. And that is exciting because, well, let's read you the blurb about Bryce Eldridge, who, Dan Szymborski then goes on to rank prospects by position, and Bryce Eldridge is, in fact, the top-ranked first base prospect in the game by Zips. And the write-up by Szymborski goes as follows, quote, Bryce Eldridge is the highest-ranked first base prospect Zips has seen in some time. Last year, the top-ranked first base prospect was Nolan Shanuel, all the way down at number 57. Eldridge burst through the Giants system in 2024, combining for a 137 weighted runs created plus across 4 levels and he doesn't turn 21 until this year's playoffs. He already has a 97 weighted runs created plus projection right now at age 20. That would be in the major leagues, like league average offensively. Right now at age 20 is the projection. And while Zips doesn't actually assess things this way, he certainly looks like a first baseman. Not all of his comps ended up working out, but two of the top ones are Boog Powell and David Ortiz. I'm sure the Giants would be very happy with either. And so what's funny is I actually asked Dan Szymborski about this when he came out with his Zips projections for the Giants, and he said don't get too carried away because it's age-related comps. So we'll get more into what that means and how the Zips projection system works in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by wonderful pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with wonderful pistachios. Wonderful pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk right here, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, here we go. I'm going to explain more what I meant there at the end, talking about comps. Well, Dan Szymborski was talking about comps, and that is how the Zips projection system works. But it's also interesting that he kind of shot me down when I asked about Bryce Eldridge and getting a David Ortiz comp. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. What I mean by every day is for now 3 days a week, but back to 5 in March, and March is right around the corner. Currently, it is the 20th of February, so next week is our last day of doing 3 days a week, and then we will be daily starting on March 3rd. Anyway, let's get right back to it. Bryce Eldridge. So I'll just reread that last little bit. It says, Dan Szymborski wrote, not all of his comps ended up working out, but two of the top ones are Boog Powell and David Ortiz. I'm sure the Giants will be very happy with either. And so, yes, the Zips projection system works by looking at comps, like looking back in history and seeing what players who were that age did at whatever levels. And that's why a number like weighted runs created plus is helpful, because you can compare eras. It's saying Bryce Eldridge last year was 37% above average for where he played. And it's better than looking at, okay, this was his batting average. Because right now, for example, in Major League Baseball, the league average batting average has fallen all the way down to like 242, whereas a number of decades ago, just a couple or so, the league average batting average was like 280. And so it doesn't make any sense to compare those, because it's just different now. What normal is different now. But by weighted runs created plus, 100 is always average in a given year. And so anyway, I don't remember exactly where I'm going with that. But anyway, yeah, so the comp system is how Zips works. And that's not how all projection systems work, but that's how Zips works. And anyway, I asked Dan Szymborski when he came out with the Giants Zips projections, like, whoa, should we be excited about David Ortiz being a comp here for Bryce Eldridge? And what he said was, don't get too excited, because remember, these are age-related comps, meaning it's talking about a 20-year-old David Ortiz. It's not. It's saying like in 2025 from Bryce Eldridge, expect similar production to what you would have expected from a 20-year-old David Ortiz. But of course, there's some line to be drawn to say like, well, if David Ortiz was doing that at age 20, then that could be the trajectory of a Bryce Eldridge. And Boog Powell, of course, played, not of course, I actually kind of had to look this up, from 1961 to 1977. And is he in the Hall of Fame? I don't think so, but I'd have to look. I beg my, excuse my ignorance. I'm kind of like in the dark a little bit about players who played decades before I was born. I was born in the 80s myself, but yeah, I mean, Boog Powell was very good. It had a 134, weighted runs created plus 44.1, FanGraphs wins above replacement. I feel bad not knowing if he's in the Hall of Fame. Obviously, David Ortiz, is he already in the Hall of Fame? Has he been retired for that long? I feel kind of stupid right now. Boog Powell does not look like he's in the Hall of Fame, but MVP, 4-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champion. So, yeah, obviously a great career. And yes, no, the Giants would not be unhappy if Bryce Eldridge turned into anything like either of those players. And so that's something to get excited about. And then we've known for a long time that Bryce Eldridge is someone to be excited about, but Zips is the highest we've seen. What FanGraphs has written about Bryce Eldridge is that if he basically just continues to do what he's been doing and proves he can hit upper minors pitching, because he hasn't spent much time in the upper minors, then he, for them, would be a top 100 or top 10, prospect. Yeah, David Ortiz is in the Hall of Fame. Shows how much I pay attention to the Hall of Fame, but that he would be a top 10 prospect by their next update, essentially. And so Bryce Eldridge, he's in Major League Camp, and Zips, an objective computer system sees him as the 6th best prospect in baseball. So moving along, I want to get to another player, the only other player who shows up on the FanGraphs list also, but there's also some interesting data that Dan Szymborski of Zips provides about how many players per team are in the top 50 prospects, how many are in the top 100, how many are in the top 200, and how many are in the top 500. So we'll give you that data too. But the next player I want to discuss is Carson Whisenhunt, because he shows up on this list prominently as well. Not as highly, but he comes in as the number 46 prospect in baseball according to Zips. And when we dig a little bit deeper, we will find a little write-up on Whisenhunt where Dan Szymborski says Jackson Jobe, who I think is considered by some scouts to be like the top pitching prospect in baseball. He writes, Jackson Jobe moved up as expected compared to last year, and Carson Whisenhunt is one less walk per game from being an elite prospect, at least as Zips sees it. One less walk per game from being an elite prospect, at least as Zips sees it. It already likes him better long-term than last year's San Francisco graduate Kyle Harrison. So as highly touted as Kyle Harrison was, and still is, that's kind of my point, is that Harrison, yes, pitched last year, but you're far from a finished product at age like 22 after 1 year of Major League experience. But Zips likes Carson Whisenhunt better as a long-term piece than Kyle Harrison. So there's more about Whisenhunt that Szymborski writes about. So just to point out, he sorts it to look at pitchers too, like just isolate the pitchers and say, who are the top pitching prospects in baseball? And Carson Whisenhunt, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, comes in as the 7th ranked pitching prospect in all of baseball, according to Zips. And so those two little nuggets there that Zips already sees a better long-term future for Whisenhunt than Kyle Harrison, and that Whisenhunt is number 46 overall. I said 2 nuggets, but 3, and that he's the 7th best pitching prospect in baseball, according to this, which again differs largely from, if you look at FanGraphs. Like I'm looking at the FanGraphs, he shows side by side the Zips rank and the FanGraphs rank. And we're going to see, I'll just tell you now, Carson Whisenhunt by FanGraphs, by like a human being, comes in at number 95. So also a top 100, but number 95 versus number 46 for Zips. And Bryce Eldridge, now that we've said all this, comes in at number 26 by FanGraphs and number 6 by Zips. And so Zips is higher on both of these two players than humans, essentially. And lastly, I just wanted to point out something I posted on Twitter, so I'm going to reference what I wrote because it's easier to find that way, that for the Giants, they have 2 players in the top 50 in the Zips projection system, in the guys we just talked about, Bryce Eldridge and Whisenhunt, and that's tied for 8th in baseball to have 2 in the top 50. So that's not bad. Tied for 8th best, to have 2. Not all teams have 2+ prospects in the top 50. I mean, I guess I should see how many are tied with them, and I will right now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams have 2, and then a bunch of teams have 1, and 5 teams have 0. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 have 1. So that's half of the teams have 1 or fewer. So I guess half the teams have 2 or more. And there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams with more than 2. Anyway, that's a lot of info, but I think it's important. And the Giants also have 2 in the top 100. So there's nobody else in the top 100. So that's where it starts to get not so good. And that's tied for 20th in baseball. And they have 3 in the top 200, which is tied for 28th in baseball. So that's where it gets to be a little bit of a problem, according to Zips. And they have 14 players in the top 500, which is tied for 22nd. So it's interesting because it differs a little. Also, again, this is not counting all the players who have graduated, not counting Kyle Harrison or Hayden Birdsong or Landon Roop or Elliot Ramos or Marco Luciano or Tyler Fitzgerald or Luis Matos. None of these guys are being counted here. So that's something to keep in mind. So lastly, coming up in just a minute, we'll give you the FanGraphs top 100 list, see what they have to say about these 2 players, and wrap it up with that. So more about that in just a minute, and before we get into it. Today's episode of Locked on Giants is brought to you in part by our good friends over at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, as promised, we're going to shift over to the human version of things. We all know that computers are taking over the world, right? When you have some complex question, who do you ask? Do you ask a human or do you ask an AI robot, right? That's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, I value human input, obviously. I value what I see with my eyes. I watch every single baseball game. I've watched a lot of you have too. I'm not saying you haven't, but I watch every Giants game every year. And so let's not act like I'm just sitting in front of a computer to analyze baseball. But I think doing both is valuable. Watch the games, see what you see, but also trust that these computer models, like when I read his 10 years ago, his projection system was already doing a good job at calling out really good prospects. And so to see Bryce Eldridge at number 6 is exciting. And he's in Major League Camp. And they've cleared a path. I mean, the inaction, you can look at it one way. You can look at it two ways. You can say they didn't do enough to make their team better. They should have signed Alex Bregman. They should have signed Pete Alonso. And for a long time, I was kind of beating that drum. But then the draft pick compensation, that's a huge deal because what are we talking about right now? Prospects. And they're losing draft picks. They lost them with Blake Snell. They lost them with Matt Chapman, those signings last offseason. And they lost more with Willy Adames. And so you'd lose even more with another signing of a player who received and rejected the qualifying offer, such as Pete Alonso or Alex Bregman, basically all the top players. As long as they weren't traded in season, as long as they hadn't previously received a qualifying offer, they were eligible to get one, and they would have if they're a top player. So anyway, given how many picks they've had to surrender in the last 2 years, I don't think it made sense to sign any more qualifying offer free agents. Not to say they shouldn't have done more, but what's clear, like I said, is that they're going to give chances to young players throughout the year. And I think for a long time, that's what a lot of fans have wanted. And it's fun. Like when you see Elliot Ramos break out or Tyler Fitzgerald break out, and hopefully more guys this year break out, that's what makes baseball fun, like the most fun, I think. And so I'll choose to kind of look at it from that perspective for now. Maybe it'll be awful. I don't know. But anyway, moving on to the human version of the top 100 prospects list. We had write-ups on all these guys when FanGraphs did like the Giants, just like Zips did its Giants report. FanGraphs did its Giants prospects report, which was separate from the Zips one. And so the write-ups are going to be the same, but the position of where they are is different. And I think it's worth kind of rereading the write-ups and also mentioning what the future value is of these players. So Roki Sasaki is the number one prospect, like I said, according to the human version of FanGraphs prospect evaluation, with a future value of 65 on the 20 to 80 scouting scale, which is why he was so highly sought after. The next tier of players, there's a handful of guys, number 2 through 10, with a future value of 60. And then beyond that, there's a bunch of guys, numbers 11 through 29, with a future value of 55. And Bryce Eldridge finds himself in that category and ranks at number 26 overall. So Carson Whisenhunt is all the way down at number 95 with a future value of 50. And there's a little write-up of future values, which I should read to you if I can find it on this page. I think it's right there. Further explanation on future value. Please read this and this. Okay. Somewhere there's like a chart. Okay. Future value for hitters. What did I say Bryce Eldridge was? 55 on the... So Roki Sasaki at 65. Well, that's a pitcher. And man, for pitchers, that's somewhere between 5. It's about a 5-win player, which is, all-star candidate type, top of the rotation types, players like that. So anyway, for Bryce Eldridge coming in with a 55 future value, what they say that means is above average regular. So it's one tier short of all-star. And so a 60 would be an all-star. A 70 would be a top 10 overall player. An 80 would be a top 5 overall player. So an above average regular, meaning 2.5 to 3.3 WAR is what they say. So that would be somewhat of a disappointment if that's all Bryce Eldridge turned out to be. But I think there's a chance that he's more than that. And actually, what's fun about, if you look at these reports on FanGraphs, this is actually really what I wanted to get into, was they do these little charts where they show the likelihood of these different future value outcomes. And I don't know exactly how they come up with this, but like they've got Bryce Eldridge's probability of being a bust at about 12%, the probability of him being a 40 to 45 future value player at about 20. And again, 40 to 45, that would be like bench player, low end, regular / platoon player. And so those two combined, 20 plus 12, about a third of a chance that he's either a bust or like a low end regular. And then the 50 to 55 future value, it says like 33%, so about a third chance of that outcome. But then 60 to 65% is, or 60 to 65 future value, they put the probability at 20%, and 70 plus future value, they put the probability of that at about 15%. So it's more likely, according to this, however they come up with this, that he will be a 70 plus future value player than a bust. And a 70 is a top 10 overall player in baseball. And so, and again, the odds there on this are, I don't know how accurate, but like 13-14% of being a top 10 player in baseball. And if you add that with the 60 to 65 future value, which is about 20%, you add that to like 13, it's about a third of a chance, according to this, that he's like an all-star player to a top 10 overall player in baseball. So anyway, I thought that was fun to examine in that way. And then for Whisenhunt, just very quickly, you can see like the odds of him being a bust, they have at 30%. The odds of him being a 40 to 45 future value, about 22%. A 50 to 55 future value, 30%. And then above that, a combined roughly 20-ish%. So anyway, I encourage you to look at this for yourself, because I'm sure that's a little hard to imagine without looking at these little charts. You go to the FanGraphs top 100 prospects list, and underneath the write-up, just hit the little button that says expand, and you'll see the I forget what you call it, but the little graph where it shows the probability of each outcome. I'll have to read up more on how they come up with this number exactly. But anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter or X at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot, so thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.